Hello, and welcome to the Quantum Fit Podcast. I'm Taylor, and I am your host. This podcast is all about applying the different principles of quantum physics and quantum biology to your health and fitness. This gives us a holistic view of how different environmental factors, such as sunlight or cold, play a major role in your overall health. So I won't just be talking about diet or exercise and developing good habits. If you want to really make lasting changes in how you feel, think, and act, then I'd recommend you try to listen closely and have an open mind to what I have to say. Every day I'll be hitting you with a quick 7 to 15 minute long podcast. I keep it short like this because it makes it both informative and to the point so that you don't feel quite so overwhelmed with information. Also, currently I do not do any kind of advertisements. So instead, I ask that you share this podcast with a friend or family member if you enjoyed the message and gained something from it. I want to be able to spread quality and easy to understand content that everyone can take and use in their own daily lives. I would highly appreciate it. On to today's episode, Cardiovascular Health and the Sun. Today we are covering how blood flows in the body. It's not what you've always been told, as you could probably guess since we're covering it. There's a lot more going on than just heart pulses. First of all, the heart is incapable of physically pumping all blood through the body. The amount of force needed to push all of that fluid would actually cause the heart to implode. It would actually, the muscles would have to contract so hard that they would just completely rip apart if, again, the heart was pumping all the blood. I mean, the heart does do a great deal of work, but it's not the only force in the equation. Of course, it should be mentioned that, the heart also serves as an essential junction to take in and spew out non and fully oxygenated blood where it needs to go, but again, there's not enough force there to actually flow blood through the whole body by itself. Another problem that arises is that, and this one's kind of funny, blood cells are oftentimes bigger than capillaries by as much as 50%, right? I mean, just think about that. If you have a hose and you were to, try to fit something through it that was 50 times this, or 50% bigger than it, it's like, think of like a snake, if it eats like a big meal, like those giant anacondas or whatever, if they're eating like a whole deer or something, they have that huge lump in them, it's crazy that blood cells can even get through capillaries that are that small. But even in the best case scenario where blood cells are the smallest size and, they'll only be a little bit smaller than even the biggest capillaries, even still, I mean, the blood cell might be slightly smaller than those capillaries, but it's still going to block the flow, It fills most of the space. And I mean, yes, blood cells can change the shape, the blood cell can change its own shape in order to help with squeezing through, but they still have to be pushed through the vein. Again, if you had this situation in water hose, you would have extreme pressure buildup and no liquid would pass. And if the only force driving blood flow is mechanical force derived from the heart, why the hell is pressure never lost within healthy capillaries? Because even though those blood cells can be way bigger than the capillary, blood flows through it perfectly fine, no problems. There's never any shortages of flow or any stoppages. Well, again, assuming you have healthy capillaries. Now, the answer to all this lies in the power of structured water being capable of doing mechanical work with stored energy. If you take a tube that has an extremely hydrophilic interior and place it in a tub of water, easy water will form on the inside of the tube. What will happen is the inner rim will be negative, but towards the center will be positive. All right, and because structured water is always actively undergoing change, even if it essentially stays the same size, because again, the way that structured water is formed, you're always going to be getting hydronium ions or extra hydrogen popping off of it, and in some spots it'll connect again to the easy, and then it'll get kicked off, and basically there's just a whole bunch of movement that's actually constantly happening with EZ, even if it stays pretty much the same size. So what'll happen though is water that's not a part of the EZ inside of the tube will actually end up moving through the tube in one direction. All right, and this movement can actually be maintained for hours and hours without any real source of energy being added to the water. I mean, it depends, of course, on all kinds of, all environmental factors impact it. If you have no light source or magnetic source, then the movement will probably stop quite a bit faster. But if you have a constant light source on it, it might be able to maintain a little bit of movement, almost forever. It just kind of keeps going and going and fueling it. So this is important because EZ is in our veins, so the exact same thing is happening. The more structured water we have in our veins, the more mechanical pushing power we have to move blood. This will lower our blood pressure and make the heart's job less difficult. This means that high blood pressure is directly tied to a shitty environment. Are things starting to click? This is how your environment impacts your cardiovascular health directly. Because again, sunlight is going to be the main thing that'll help you build up EZ. The more EZ you have, the better your blood flow is going to be. That's why the sun has been shown to be, just as good, if not better in many cases, than, blood pressure medication. Just going out in the sun a couple hours every single day, that is what will drop blood pressure like crazy. Or at least, regulate it, get it down to proper levels. Now, knowing this, that structured water is in the veins, this leads us to some kind of cool mechanics as far as changes in the blood go, since, we know that the EZ is there. It's it's just complicated, but it's interesting to talk about. It also possibly answers the question of how the body is able to adapt to increasing carbon dioxide levels in the blood. So, it is known that carbon dioxide causes water to drop in pH and become more acidic. Okay, well, as the carbon dioxide is dropping the pH, a decrease in pH also lowers the size of the exclusion zone. Since structured water is essentially stored potential energy and light, if it's suddenly forced to decrease in size, then that stored energy must be released. The adjacent tissues will then absorb that light to create more EZ outside of the vein. All right, is that making some sense? Again, it's kind of complicated. So as if you're getting more and more carbon dioxide in your blood, it's going to be dropping the pH. Your blood will become more acidic. As it becomes more acidic, the exclusion zone actually decreases. But as it's decreasing, the EZ size, the potential energy that was stored in it is being released as that acidity, goes up. And that stored energy, again, is going to be the nearest thing is going to absorb it, which is going to be the tissues surrounding the veins, the capillaries, or whatever. So, perhaps adapting to increasing amounts of CO2 is more or less tied to how much EZ water we have. If we have the ability to generate more EZ as we heal and become more optimal, perhaps we are able to keep our veins stocked with more structured water. And then, this is a little bit off the top of my head, but maybe the body tells the brain to breathe more in response to critically low levels of EZ in the veins. It knows that clearing CO2 will restore EZ in the veins to keep blood pressure stable. That might be part of the, I guess the point is, maybe it is it's much more quantum focused than biochemical focused. The response that the brain will get to breathe more. Maybe it's simply just the dropping of structured water in the veins because, you're losing blood pressure or whatever, so you need to start breathing more. Either way, it's just an interesting thought. I'm not sure if there's any validity in it, but I don't know. I guess there's a lot of other possibilities you could go into with, pH and everything, because if you increase the pH, acidity, again, you're losing EZ water. So that has a lot of implications all over in the body, when they talk about acidity and alkalinity, and I don't really pay attention to most of that. I pay attention mostly to structured water, because that tends to be the most important thing to focus on, because it's the easiest to influence, really, because you're just looking at environment instead of real specifics. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast on cardiovascular health from a quantum view. If you have any questions and comments, find me on Instagram at RealQuantumFit, the Quantum Fit Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, Taylor Kelson, or through a voice message across the Anchor app. See ya!